So today is episode 1 of my drift progress. So my overall goal with this series is to take everything that I learned from drifting on a sim and converting that to drifting in real life. So I think that's going to be the most important thing as I'm going through this whole series, is seeing how much drifting on a sim converts to drifting in real life. I've definitely heard it work the other way around, which makes a lot of sense, meaning people drifting in real life on a real track in a real car and then hopping into a sim and drifting. I feel like it would be easier that way, but not sure. But that's the whole point of this series, is to do it the other way around, of drifting on a sim setup and then drifting in real life. So I'll be covering a couple things throughout this first episode. First and foremost is kind of how I plan on learning to drift on the sim, and then kind of where I get that inspiration from, and then diving into what I went through and like what I struggled with at first, and then kind of going through the steps of how I improved and what I learned as I got better. It'll also be interesting because my plan as of now, and it definitely could change down the road, but my plan as of now is to kind of take pretty much step by step of what I'm doing on the sim and then converting that to real life as well. Meaning the first thing I'm doing drifting on the sim is drift circles, and then figure eights, and then learning how to entry and stuff like that. So, and I mean, I don't know if that's like just standard of what you do in real life drifting, but that's just kind of how I plan to do it, is learn drift circles on the sim first, figure eights on the sim, and then so on. So I'm sure there's like a ton of pro drifters, or I guess pro sim drifters on YouTube, but specifically I've been watching C Toretto. That dude is super cold. He has some kind of shorter tutorials out there, just basic tutorials for drifting. Definitely have been following his stuff and kind of been learning from him. The other tutorials I've also been following is Evil Rabbit, I think his YouTube name is, but I think he has some pretty good tutorials for beginners, so it's kind of what I've been basing all my stuff off as I've been starting. Alright, so I won't spend too much time in this segment because I don't think anyone wants to see me just spin out over and over again. So yeah, the very first thing that I wanted to do was to get the best throttle control and car control I could as I'm going in a drift circle. I just wanted to kind of understand how to go in a drift circle as best I could without mashing the throttle down, and just spinning in place, I guess. So I don't think the throttle control was all that hard to kind of get down. I think pairing the throttle with the steering was the hardest part for me personally. At first I wanted to really like steer the car in the correct direction, instead of using the throttle to kind of like maintain the drift. So I kept just like throwing myself out of the drift circle with my steering instead of correcting it with the throttle. And that's definitely the first thing I learned, was just understanding that throttle control and not oversteering. I feel like the drift circles, or whatever you want to call them, donuts, drift circles, whatever, I feel like it was mainly just a feel thing. Like you really just have to get a feel for it, and then I don't know, you just kind of get it. So I won't stay on that too long. So what I struggled with the most with the figure eights was when to catch the wheel at the top of the 8, if that makes sense. So kind of you make the half drift circle, you cross the 8, and then when you're coming to the top of the 8, when to catch the wheel and then when to give it throttle to continue drifting around the circle is when I struggle the most. And I think to correct that, and I'm definitely still working on it, I definitely haven't locked it in and mastered it yet, but I feel like what's been working for me is kind of just letting the wheel do its thing as I'm transitioning, and then once I get to the point of, once the car's facing where I want it to go, I catch the wheel and then give it enough throttle but not too much. So at the time of recording this video, I'm at a point where I'm pretty comfortable of throwing the car around and kind of putting it wherever I want it to go. I can complete as many drift circles as I want. I can get into a figure 8 and complete them probably like 80% of the time. So I think the next step is kind of getting into longer donuts, or I guess bigger drift circles, and then bigger figure 8s, and then getting into entering and stuff like that, and then from there get into using the handbrake and maybe left foot braking as well.